Armin had grown up in a small village surrounded by thick forests and tall mountains. From a young age, he had heard the elders speak about the legendary creatures that roamed deep in the forest. Among all these tales, one story always caught his attention. It was about a creature so strong, so clever, that no one had ever managed to catch it with bare hands. Hunters tried for years, and each one returned with stories of narrow escapes, scratches, and sometimes serious injuries. The creature had become a symbol of courage, strength, and patience, a true test for anyone daring enough to face it. Armin had always been fascinated by the idea of challenging himself. He loved exploring the forests, observing animals, and learning how they moved, hunted, and survived. But the thought of catching this particular creature seemed impossible. Still, there was something inside him that whispered he could do it, that he had the skill, determination, and courage to succeed where others had failed. He wanted to prove not only to the villagers, but also to himself, that he could face a challenge like no other. Before even stepping into the forest, Armin spent weeks preparing. He talked to experienced hunters in the village, asking questions about the creature's behavior, the signs it left behind, and the best times to track it. He listened carefully to their stories, noticing patterns in their failures and successes. Some hunters warned him about the creature's incredible speed, others about its sharp senses that could detect even the smallest movement. Every piece of advice made him more determined. Armin realized that catching this creature would require patience, careful planning, and respect for the forest, not just brute strength. He also studied the forest itself. Every path, every river, every clearing had a story. He walked through the woods, memorizing the sounds of birds, the rustling of leaves, and the tracks of smaller animals. He knew that understanding the forest would help him understand the creature. He practiced moving silently, crouching low, and blending into his surroundings. Even small mistakes could alert the creature to his presence, so he needed to be perfect. In every move, Armin trained his body as well. He ran along the mountain trails to build stamina, climbed trees to improve his agility, and lifted heavy logs to strengthen his arms. He practiced hand-eye coordination and reflex exercises, knowing that if he encountered the creature, every second would count. His hands, in particular, needed to be strong yet precise. Catching such a powerful creature without any tools required strength, but also careful control. He spent hours gripping ropes, climbing, and even practicing holding onto smaller animals, in a controlled environment to test his technique. As he prepared, Armin also thought about the mental challenge. Many hunters had failed not because they weren't strong, but because fear, frustration, or impatience got the better of them. He practiced staying calm under pressure. He meditated by the riverside, imagining himself tracking the creature silently, anticipating its movements and reacting without hesitation. He visualized the encounter over and over, imagining how he would act if the creature charged or if it tried to escape. His mind needed to be as sharp as his body, and he worked on controlling every emotion, from excitement to fear. The village children often asked him why he wanted to take on such a dangerous challenge. Armin would smile and tell them, "It's not about being the strongest. It's about learning, testing yourself, and understanding the world around you." The elders nodded in approval, remembering their own youth and the lessons the forest had taught them. Some shook their heads, worried about the danger he would face, but deep down everyone admired his determination. Finally, the day arrived when Armin felt ready. He packed only the essentials, some food, a water flask, a rope, and a small notebook to record any signs of the creature. He didn't need weapons. His goal was to catch it with his bare hands. The villagers gathered to see him off, offering blessings and words of encouragement. Children ran alongside him for a short distance, curious and excited, while elders reminded him to respect the forest and its creatures. Armin felt a mix of nervousness and excitement, his heart racing at the thought of the unknown. As he entered the forest, everything seemed familiar yet different. The sounds of the village faded, replaced by the whispers of leaves, the chirping of birds, and the distant rustle of animals in the undergrowth. Armin moved carefully, noticing every detail. The broken branches, the footprints, the crushed grass where animals had passed. He was looking for signs of the legendary creature, knowing that patience and observation were more important than rushing. Every step brought him closer to the unknown, and every sound made him alert. The first day passed slowly. Armin spotted deer, rabbits, and birds, but no sign of the creature. He took notes, studied tracks, and adjusted his strategies. He realized that the forest was teaching him lessons even without the creature appearing. Every moment of waiting built his patience, every observation sharpened his senses, and every challenge strengthened his resolve. By the time night fell, Armin had found a safe place to rest. He built a small fire, ate his simple meal, and reflected on the day. He felt tired but also proud. He had survived the forest, learned from it, and prepared himself for what was coming. Before falling asleep, he thought about the stories he had heard. He remembered hunters who had tried and failed, but he also remembered the lesson hidden in every story. Respect, patience, and courage were more important than victory. Armin understood that his journey was not just about catching the creature. It was about learning, growing, and proving to himself that he could face the impossible. With that thought, he closed his eyes, feeling a mixture of anticipation and calm, ready for the challenge that awaited him in the days to come. The morning sun barely peeked through the thick canopy of the forest when Armin woke, his senses immediately alert. The night had been quiet, except for the occasional hoot of an owl or the rustle of small animals in the underbrush. He stretched his stiff muscles and packed his small belongings carefully. Today, he thought, would be the day he might finally see the legendary creature. Every sound, every shadow, and every movement seemed sharper, more intense. He moved slowly, carefully stepping over roots and stones, keeping his eyes open for any unusual tracks or signs. As he ventured deeper into the forest, the trees grew taller and the underbrush denser. He noticed the subtle differences in the soil, how some areas were damp while others were dry, and how animals preferred certain paths over others. Armin knew that the creature would leave signs too: broken branches, unusual tracks, or flattened grass. Every clue, no matter how small, could lead him closer. His heart pounded with anticipation, but he forced himself to remain calm, knowing that one careless movement could alert the creature. After hours of careful tracking, Armin began to notice subtle changes in the forest. The sounds of smaller animals seemed quieter, as if they too were aware of a powerful presence. The wind shifted differently here, carrying scents that were unfamiliar. Armin crouched behind a large tree, peering into a small clearing. There, he noticed marks on the ground that seemed too large to belong to any ordinary animal. The soil was pressed down in unusual patterns, and broken branches suggested a struggle had taken place recently. His pulse quickened. This was the first clear sign that the creature had been nearby. He moved slowly, using every skill he had learned. He stepped lightly on fallen leaves and soft earth, avoiding sticks that could snap and make noise. He remembered the advice of the elders. When you hunt, the forest is your friend. Learn its rhythms, respect its creatures, and it will guide you. Armin took a deep breath, feeling the energy of the forest around him. Every bird call, every rustling leaf, and every distant sound of flowing water seemed to give him clues. He followed the tracks cautiously, sometimes crawling low to get a better view or peering through the underbrush. Hours passed, and the sun climbed higher in the sky. Armin had encountered many smaller animals, deer, rabbits, and even a few wild boars, but none of these were the legendary creature. Still, he remained focused. He knew that patience was as important as strength. The creature was clever, and it would not reveal itself easily. He remembered how the elders had said, "It is not enough to see the creature, you must understand it." So he observed the patterns of the forest, the movement of animals, and the subtle signs that something powerful was near. By midday, the forest grew quieter. Even the birds seemed to be watching him. Armin sensed that he was getting closer. He noticed a set of larger tracks, deeper and more defined than before. The footprints suggested incredible weight and strength, moving swiftly but carefully. He crouched beside them, tracing their direction with his eyes. There was a sense of awe and fear mixed together. This was no ordinary animal. His pulse quickened, but he forced himself to stay calm. He studied every detail, noting the distance between steps, the depth of the prints, and the marks left by claws. Suddenly, a sharp movement caught his attention. In a small clearing ahead, he saw a flicker of brown and gray, a shadow moving with incredible speed. He froze, holding his breath. The creature's movements were swift and deliberate, almost blending with the forest around it. Armin's heart raced. He realized he was about to witness something truly extraordinary. The creature was massive, with powerful limbs and sharp, intelligent eyes. Its fur was thick, allowing it to move silently despite its size. It paused, sniffing the air, its ears twitching at every sound. Armin stayed low, observing every motion. He noted how the creature moved with purpose, how it used the trees and bushes for cover, and how it seemed to understand the forest as well as he did. For a moment, he felt a deep respect for this powerful animal. It was not just strong. It was clever, cautious, and aware of everything around it. Armin realized that catching it would require more than strength. It would require understanding, patience, and strategy. The creature suddenly turned, its eyes locking onto Armin's hiding spot. Time seemed to slow. Armin held his breath, staying perfectly still. The creature sniffed the air, its sharp senses testing the environment. It took a few careful steps in his direction but did not immediately attack or run. Instead, it circled, observing. Armin knew that any sudden movement could ruin everything. He stayed low, controlling his fear, and focused on the creature's behavior, learning its habits in real time. Minutes passed like hours. Armin noticed how it used subtle shifts in weight, the flick of its tail, and the movement of its head, to sense the surroundings. He realized that the creature was not just reacting instinctively, it was thinking, analyzing, and adapting. This realization filled him with both awe and determination. He knew that to succeed he needed to match this intelligence with his own knowledge and instincts. By late afternoon, the creature moved away, disappearing into the dense forest. Armin exhaled slowly, feeling both relief and excitement. He had seen it, and more importantly, he had learned something crucial about it: the tracks it left behind, the patterns in its movement, and the way it observed its environment gave him clues for the next steps. He followed the tracks carefully, making sure not to disturb the area. Each footprint, each broken branch, told a story of where the creature had been and where it might go next. As the sun began to set, Armin found a safe spot to rest, hidden from the forest paths. He ate his simple meal and reflected on the day's events. The encounter had been more intense than he had imagined, and it left him both tired and exhilarated. He knew that the real challenge was still ahead. Seeing the creature had given him hope, but it had also shown him the difficulty of what he aimed to accomplish. Catching it would require not only physical strength but mental agility, patience, and careful observation. Before closing his eyes, Armin reviewed everything he had learned. He studied the tracks, recalled the creature's behavior, and thought about how to anticipate its next move. He understood that the forest had its own rhythm, and the creature was a part of that rhythm. To catch it, he would need to move with the forest, not against it. With this understanding, he felt a renewed sense of purpose and determination. The night came, filled with sounds of the forest, and Armin slept lightly, ready for the encounter that could change his life forever. The next morning, Armin woke with a renewed sense of purpose. He had seen the creature, and he now understood its patterns and intelligence. Today, he would need to put everything he had learned into practice. He carefully packed his belongings and set out before the sun rose, moving quietly through the dense forest. Every sound seemed amplified in the stillness of the early morning: the rustle of leaves, the distant call of birds, and the gentle flow of a nearby stream. He followed the tracks he had observed the day before, keeping his eyes and ears alert for any sign of the creature. Hours passed as he navigated the forest with extreme caution. The tracks led him through uneven terrain, across shallow rivers and around fallen logs. He noticed how the creature had left subtle marks on the ground, almost like a puzzle to be solved. Armin crouched low to examine each footprint and broken branch, imagining the creature's weight, speed, and strength. He realized that catching it would be a test not only of his skill, but also of his patience and understanding of the forest. Every step he took needed to be deliberate, quiet, and calculated. Suddenly, a shadow darted between the trees ahead. Armin froze, barely breathing. He watched as the creature moved swiftly, its movements precise and deliberate. It seemed aware of his presence, but it did not panic. Armin's heart raced as he carefully studied its behavior. He noticed how it used the environment to its advantage, slipping between thick bushes, climbing over fallen logs, and pausing to listen. He knew that any sudden action on his part could startle it and end the opportunity to catch it. Armin followed, at a careful distance, keeping himself hidden. He moved slowly, sometimes crawling through underbrush or pausing behind trees to observe. The forest was alive around him. The wind, the birds, and even the smaller animals seemed to respond to the tension in the air. He realized that the creature was testing him, just as much as he was testing himself. It was a battle of wits, patience, and skill. He had to anticipate its moves without revealing his own, and he had to be ready to act at the precise moment. As the hours passed, Armin encountered challenges he had not expected. The terrain became rougher, with steep slopes and slippery rocks. His hands and feet were scratched by branches and thorns, and exhaustion began to creep in. But he refused to give up. He took brief breaks to catch his breath, studying the creature's tracks and planning his next moves. He knew that giving up now would mean losing a rare opportunity that might never come again. Every moment demanded focus, strength, and determination. At one point, the creature paused near a shallow river, drinking cautiously. Armin used the moment to study it more closely. He noticed the tension in its muscles, the way its ears twitched, and how its eyes constantly scanned the surroundings. He realized that this creature was not only physically strong, but also extremely aware of everything around it. Armin felt a mixture of awe and determination. He knew that to catch it, he needed to use strategy, not just force. He studied the riverbank, the surrounding trees, and the patterns of movement, searching for the perfect opportunity to act. Hours turned into the late afternoon, and Armin's determination began to face its toughest test. The creature suddenly darted into a dense thicket, disappearing from view. Armin knew he had to act quickly but carefully. He approached the area slowly, listening for any sign of movement. His senses were heightened. Every snap of a twig or rustle of leaves made him pause and assess. He moved like a shadow, blending with the environment, ready for whatever challenge lay ahead. Then, the moment came. The creature reappeared in a small clearing, alert and ready. Armin took a deep breath, preparing himself for the final part of the struggle. He remembered all his training, how to move silently, how to anticipate the creature's actions, and how to use his strength wisely. He crouched low, calculating the distance and timing his approach. The forest seemed to hold its breath along with him. Every second mattered. The creature sensed him and reacted immediately, charging with incredible speed. Armin dodged, rolled, and grabbed onto a tree branch to steady himself. The struggle had begun. The creature was strong, its movements unpredictable, and its energy seemed endless. Armin used his agility, speed, and careful planning to keep up. He ducked behind trees, climbed over logs, and adjusted his strategy with every move the creature made. The battle was intense, a true test of human skill against raw natural power. Sweat poured down Armin's face and his muscles ached, but he refused to give in. He studied the creature's pattern, its charges, pauses, and how it reacted to obstacles. He began to anticipate its movements, matching strength with precision and patience. Every close encounter made him more focused, more alert, and more determined. He realized that this was not just a physical struggle. It was a mental one as well. He had to outthink the creature without losing his own composure. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, the struggle continued. Armin used every ounce of energy he had left, adjusting his approach and seizing small opportunities. The creature was Clever, but Armand's careful observation and timing began to give him an advantage. He noticed a momentary hesitation, a small lapse in its movement, and he seized it. Slowly, cautiously, he closed the distance, preparing for the decisive moment. By the end of the day, both Armand and the creature were exhausted, but the balance of the struggle had shifted. Armand's patience, intelligence, and determination were beginning to make a difference. He realized that catching this creature required more than physical strength. It demanded understanding, respect, and strategic thinking. He felt a sense of awe for the animal's power, yet he was determined to succeed. The struggle had tested him in every possible way, pushing him to the limits of his skill and endurance. As night approached, Armand found a safe spot to rest, hidden from the creature. He reflected on the day's events, analyzing every move, every mistake, and every success. He knew that the final part of the struggle was coming soon. The creature had shown him its power and intelligence, and he had shown his patience and strategy. He felt ready, more focused and determined than ever. The forest was alive around him, but Armand felt in tune with it. He had survived the day, learned from the creature, and prepared himself for the decisive moment that would test everything he had worked for. The morning air was crisp, and the forest seemed to hold a sense of anticipation as Armand set out once more. The previous day's struggle had tested him in every way, and today he knew it would reach its climax. He moved carefully through the dense trees, every sense alert, remembering the creature's patterns, strengths, and moments of hesitation. His body ached, but his determination was stronger than ever. Each step he took was deliberate, every movement precise. He was no longer just tracking the creature. He was learning its rhythm, feeling the pulse of the forest, and preparing for the final confrontation. Hours passed, and the forest revealed its secrets slowly. The tracks he had been following grew clearer, the soil pressed down by the creature's weight, branches broken in a path that led deeper into the woods. Armand's heart raced with anticipation. He could sense that the decisive moment was near. The creature, as clever and alert as ever, seemed to be aware of him, testing his patience and resolve. But Armand had learned from their struggle. He knew that rushing or acting recklessly could ruin everything. Instead, he relied on observation, intuition, and careful timing. Finally, the creature appeared in a small clearing. Its powerful frame moved with both grace and caution. Armand froze, hiding behind a thick tree, studying every detail, the tension in its muscles, the flick of its tail, the way it sniffed the air for danger. He realized that this was the moment he had been preparing for all along. He needed to act with courage, precision, and patience. His mind raced through every strategy he had considered, every lesson from previous days, and every observation he had made. He inched closer, using the trees and underbrush for cover. The creature turned its head, sniffing the air, and Armand froze. He felt the weight of the challenge pressing down on him. This was not just a physical test. It was a battle of wits, courage, and understanding. He had to anticipate its every move while remaining calm and controlled. One wrong step could send it fleeing, and all the effort of the past days could be wasted. Yet he felt ready, confident, in his training, his preparation, and his patience. The creature suddenly made a move, darting toward a patch of thick brush. Armand followed silently, crouching low, his heart pounding. Every step was calculated, every breath measured. He observed how the creature used its surroundings, how it adapted to obstacles, and how it reacted to his presence. Slowly, he began to see patterns, moments of hesitation, moments of opportunity. He realized that to succeed, he would need to be both patient and bold, acting decisively at the right moment. Hours passed in careful pursuit, each moment bringing Armand closer to the creature. Finally, as the sun began to sink lower in the sky, he saw an opening. The creature paused near a large fallen tree, its attention momentarily focused elsewhere. Armand's heart raced. This was his chance. He moved quickly but quietly, closing the distance, his hands ready to act. He remembered every lesson from the struggle, how to balance strength and control, how to anticipate the creature's reactions, and how to use his environment to his advantage. With a sudden burst of speed, Arman lunged forward. The creature reacted immediately, but he had anticipated its movement. He grabbed hold, using his strength and precision to hold it steady. The struggle was intense. The creature thrashed, pushed, and tried to escape with all its power. Arman held on, using every ounce of energy in his body to maintain control. His muscles burned, his heart pounded, and sweat poured down his face. But he refused to let go. He knew that this was the moment that would define the outcome of his journey. The struggle continued for what felt like hours. Arman adjusted his grip, shifted his weight, and used the terrain to his advantage. The creature's power was incredible, but he relied on his careful planning, timing, and patience. Each movement, each reaction required focus and determination. He realized that this was more than a test of strength. It was a test of character, courage, and respect for the creature. Slowly but surely, he began to gain control. Finally, after a long and grueling struggle, the creature paused, exhausted from its own exertions. Arman held on with steady hands, his determination unwavering. He looked into its eyes and saw intelligence, awareness, and a hint of respect. In that moment, he understood the bond that had formed through their struggle, a silent recognition of skill, courage, and endurance. He did not feel triumph in the usual sense. Instead, he felt awe, respect, and a deep satisfaction in having faced such a formidable opponent and matched its power with his own. Breathing heavily, Arman carefully guided the creature to a safer area, ensuring it could not escape immediately but without causing harm. He looked around at the forest, the trees, and the earth that had tested him so thoroughly. The journey had been long, exhausting, and demanding, but it had also been transformative. He realized that the experience was about more than catching the creature. It was about learning patience, courage, respect, and the importance of careful observation. As night approached, Arman found a place to rest, sitting beside the creature he had finally cornered. He felt a mix of relief, pride, and humility. The forest had been both a challenge and a teacher, and the creature had tested him to his limits. He knew that tomorrow would bring new reflections and perhaps new challenges, but for now he allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. He had faced the toughest challenge of his life and emerged stronger, wiser, and more connected to the natural world around him. The following morning, the forest was calm, almost serene. Arman woke early, feeling the aches and exhaustion from the previous day, but also a profound sense of accomplishment. He looked at the creature, still alert but calmer now, and realized that this experience had changed him. It was not just about strength or skill, it was about respect, patience, understanding, and perseverance. He knew that the true victory was not in simply catching the creature, but in learning from it and testing his own limits. Arman carefully guided the creature back along a safe path toward the edges of the forest. He wanted to ensure it was not harmed and could return to its natural habitat once it was safe. Along the way, he reflected on everything he had learned during this journey. Each struggle, each observation, and each moment of patience had shaped him into a stronger, wiser person. He realized that the forest and its creatures were teachers, and that every challenge carried lessons far beyond physical skill. By the time he reached the outskirts of the village, Arman's reputation had already begun to spread. Villagers had heard whispers of his encounter, and some had come to see him as a hero. Children followed at a distance, eyes wide with wonder, while elders watched with a mix of pride and amazement. Arman did not boast or exaggerate. He shared the story with humility, emphasizing the lessons he had learned rather than his own bravery. He spoke of patience, observation, respect for nature, and the importance of careful planning. The villagers listened intently, inspired by his experience. They asked questions about the creature, about the forest, and about how he had managed to succeed where others had failed. Arman answered thoughtfully, explaining the importance of understanding and respecting the natural world. He reminded them that the forest was not simply a place to prove oneself. It was a living, breathing environment, full of lessons for those willing to observe and learn. His words carried wisdom beyond his years, and the villagers felt both pride and admiration for him. Arman also reflected privately on the personal growth he had experienced. He had learned to control fear, to remain calm under pressure, and to rely on both intelligence and intuition. He had discovered a strength within himself that he had not known existed, a combination of courage, patience, and resilience. The journey had tested him physically, mentally, and emotionally, and he had emerged stronger on all fronts. He realized that the true measure of a person was not in the victories alone, but in the ability to face challenges with determination and respect. As the days passed, the story of Arman's encounter spread beyond the village. Other hunters came to him for advice, eager to learn from his experience. He shared his methods, emphasizing careful observation, patience, and understanding, rather than reckless strength. Arman became a teacher in his own right, helping others to develop their skills while respecting the forest and its creatures. His experience inspired a new generation of hunters who learned that courage was not simply in action, but in knowledge, preparation, and respect. Though Arman had faced the toughest creature of the forest and succeeded, he never lost the sense of awe he felt for it. He thought often of the powerful, intelligent animal, and the lessons it had silently taught him. He realized that every creature in the forest, no matter how small or large, had its place, its purpose, and its wisdom. He had learned humility through the struggle, understanding that true mastery comes not from dominance but from observation, patience, and respect. In time, Arman continued to explore the forest, tracking other animals, learning more about the ecosystem, and testing his skills in new ways. Yet he always remembered the legendary creature that had challenged him to his limits. The experience remained a cornerstone of his life, shaping his character, his understanding of nature, and his approach to every challenge he faced. He felt a deep connection to the forest and its inhabitants, knowing that he had been part of something extraordinary, something that required courage, intelligence, and respect. Arman's journey became a story told in the village for generations, not simply as a tale of bravery, but as a story of learning, growth, and wisdom. Children grew up hearing about his experience, inspired not just by the feat, but by the lessons behind it. They learned that strength alone was not enough, that patience and observation were powerful tools, and that respect for nature and its creatures was the truest measure of skill. In the end, Arman knew that the greatest reward was not fame or recognition, but the understanding he had gained, the respect he had earned, and the personal growth he had achieved. He had faced the impossible, endured struggle, and emerged wiser and stronger. And in the quiet moments deep in the forest, he felt a lasting bond with the creature that had tested him, challenged him, and ultimately taught him the meaning of courage, patience, and respect.